That morning, the sky over Austin was clear, sunlight spilling across the glass towers of the financial district. I stepped out of the elevator on the 17th floor of NovaTrust Systems, the company I had devoted 3 relentless years to, with a bad feeling I couldn't shake. The meeting invite had arrived at midnight, nothing but a few words. Mandatory meeting, 9 o'clock in the morning. No subject line, no sender, no explanation. The main conference room sat at the corner of the building, its floor to ceiling windows overlooking the city. When I pushed the door open, Harper Dale was already seated at the head of the table, posture straight, eyes cold. Beside her sat Lucas Reed, the vice director of engineering. Once my ally, back when the system was on the brink of collapse. Now he only stared at his phone, avoiding my eyes. "You're right on time," Harper said evenly, her calm voice carrying a kind of authority that made the air feel heavy. She turned her laptop toward me. On the screen was a blurry but recognizable security photo. Me walking into the headquarters of Altaris NovaTrust's fintech rival. Harper tilted her head slightly. "Do you recognize yourself in this photo, Mara?" "Of course," I said. "I went there to meet a friend. We were discussing application security models. I don't work for Altaris." Lucas finally looked up, his tone dripping with false sympathy. "You know the terms of your contract, right? No consulting, advising, or engaging in any work for competitors, even off the clock." I took a slow breath, steadying my voice. I didn't take on any commercial assignment. It was a conference, a theoretical discussion. No data, no system details. HR was informed about the trip. Harper cut me off. "No need to justify yourself, Mara. Nova Trust's policy is very clear. This alone is grounds for immediate termination." She pulled a sheet from a thick folder and slid it across the table. "This is your termination notice, effective today." I stared at the page. Dry legal text, no gratitude, no explanation. 3 years of late nights, hundreds of system alerts, endless hours spent protecting this company from cyber attacks, all reduced to a few cold lines. "I saved NovaTrust twice from a total shutdown," I said quietly, bitterness slipping through. "I thought someone might at least ask me a question before deciding." Harper smiled faintly. "Everyone thinks they're irreplaceable. But trust me, Mara, this company will keep running just fine. You'll see." Lucas looked away. "I'm sorry, Mara. This decision wasn't mine." I pushed down the anger, my tone so calm it surprised even me. "I understand. Rules are rules." I signed the paper, set the pen down, then met Harper's gaze. "You're right. I should focus on one position." A short silence followed. Lucas looked up. Harper raised an eyebrow, unsure if she caught my meaning. "Good luck," she said curtly. I stood, adjusted my blazer. Light reflected off the glass walls, cold and sterile. Outside, the city blazed with sunlight, streets alive with people rushing to somewhere that mattered to them. In that moment, I realized I had spent too long in rooms like this, surrounded by people like them, people who believed power gave them the right to define someone's worth. Before leaving, I said softly, not to them, but to myself, "Thank you for setting me free." My heels clicked against the wooden floor as I walked out. Just before the door closed, I heard Harper's low voice, clear enough to carry through the crack. "Let's see how special she really is." I didn't turn around. I stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for the lobby. As the metal doors slid shut, my reflection stared back, calm, unbroken. And I realized what unsettled them most wasn't that I'd been fired. It was that I didn't fall apart like they expected. The elevator opened to the bright marble lobby. I walked past the reception desk, unclipped my ID badge, and set it down gently. The young receptionist looked at me, unsure. "Are you okay, Ms. Mara?" I smiled, better than ever. Then I stepped outside. The Texas morning wind brushed against my face, carrying the warmth of the rising sun. I breathed deeply, feeling as if I'd just been released from a gilded cage. In my head, my own words echoed like steel. I should focus on one position. They thought it was an admission of defeat, but only I knew. The position I'd be focusing on was no longer at NovaTrust. I stood before the building, watching the silver logo glint in the sunlight. 3 years ended in a few minutes. Yet I felt no regret, only relief, pure, liberating relief. Have you ever walked away from a place thinking you lost everything, only to realize you were finally free? If you've ever felt that way, you know exactly how I feel now. And if you're listening to this story, tell me where you're tuning in from. If you enjoy stories of quiet, intelligent revenge like this, don't forget to subscribe, because this is only the beginning. When I walked out of the NovaTrust building that morning, I didn't look back. Something inside me had gone quiet, but another part had finally awakened. I drove out of downtown Austin, letting the glass towers shrink in my rearview mirror, and as the radio hummed softly, my mind drifted back 3 years, to the day I first stepped into that company, naive but full of excitement. I still remember my interview with Lucas Reed. He smiled easily, saying the kind of smooth lines I'd heard 100 times before. NovaTrust is building a world-class cybersecurity team. You'll lead a group of 5. We want you to create a system as solid as a fortress. It sounded convincing. I had been working at a smaller company with a tight-knit team of engineers, but this was an opportunity too big to refuse. I thought I was moving up a level. The first 3 months went exactly as promised. I had a budget, the authority to recruit my own team. But only weeks after I started, a staff reduction notice appeared. 2 positions in my group were cut temporarily due to financial realignment. Then another person left from burnout. By the end of the first year, I was the only one left handling the company's entire security system. It's just temporary, Lucas said lightly. You'll have help soon. I believed him. Quarter after quarter, the help never came. Meanwhile, NovaTrust's clients tripled and the data load kept expanding. I worked 14-hour days, often sleeping in the office. I became the only person with full access to the company's core systems. I documented everything, sent reports, and warned them that putting everything on one person would lead to disaster. One autumn night, the intrusion detection system flashed red. A sophisticated attack. If I hadn't caught it, millions of customer accounts could have been exposed. I worked 72 hours straight, barely eating, barely sleeping. When it was over, I had saved the entire database. Monday morning, I came in with dark circles under my eyes, hoping for at least a word of gratitude. Harper sent me a short email. Thank you for your effort. The company will send you a $50 Starbucks card as a reward. I stared at the plastic card in my hand and smiled faintly. An all-nighter to save the company from losing billions, traded for a few cups of coffee. Sometimes, loyalty starts to crack in small moments like that. I kept working, burying myself in lines of code, patching vulnerabilities no one cared about. Every time I asked for more staff, the answer was the same. Budget constraints. Focus on priorities. Lucas would pat my shoulder and say, "No one understands this system like you do. Don't worry, you're irreplaceable." I smiled, knowing that wasn't a compliment. In the corporate world, irreplaceable often means you can't rest, can't fail, can't complain. The job consumed all my time and energy. I missed my niece's birthday. I postponed Christmas vacations 2 years in a row. Someone I used to date told me one late night, "You're not living, you're just working." I couldn't argue. I no longer had time to love anyone or to live like a normal person. Once, during an executive meeting, I presented a security risk report. I explained that the system required at least 3 people to sustain it. If I left or something happened to me, within 3 days, everything would fall into chaos. Lucas chuckled. "Mara, you're exaggerating. We have backup procedures." Harper added, "We appreciate your input, but you should focus on your duties." I left the room with a chill running down my spine. I realized I was maintaining a massive machine no one truly understood. I wasn't an engineer anymore. I was the gatekeeper, and no one cares about the gatekeeper until the gate collapses. That night, as the screen flashed with red alerts, I sat still, watching the code scroll by. For a moment, I wondered what would happen if I let go. Just 3 days, as I had warned, and the system would fall apart completely. The thought passed quickly, but it left behind a truth. This company survived because of me, and they had no idea. The next morning, I sent Lucas an email titled "Proposal for Team Expansion and Internal Training Roadmap." I outlined a full plan to reduce risk, delegate responsibilities, and build resilience. 3 days later, his reply arrived. 7 words: Postponed to next quarter. Budget constraints. I closed the email, sat back, and quietly laughed to myself. Maybe that was the moment I stopped trying to save them. 3 years, hundreds of sleepless nights, countless warnings ignored. Nova. Trust never listened to me. They only listened when it was too late, and I knew one day that too late would come, sooner than they thought. I just didn't know it would come this soon, or that the person they had just fired, would be the one standing there to watch it all fall apart. 2 months after that meeting, I received an invitation to speak at the International Cybersecurity Technology Conference in Chicago. At first, I almost didn't go. NovaTrust's budget was frozen, and any work trip required Harper's personal approval. But the organizer happened to be an old friend from college, Aaron, now leading the security research group at the Illinois Institute of Technology. He sent me a private email that read, "If NovaTrust wouldn't sponsor me, he could still get me a speaker slot. I would only need to cover my flight and lodging." I hadn't taken a single vacation in 3 years, and I thought, why not? If the company wouldn't approve it, at least I could go as an individual. I sent Harper a short message letting her know I'd be taking 3 personal days to attend the conference by personal invitation, not representing the company. Her reply came back cold as ice. Your choice. The conference took place over the weekend in a glass building overlooking Lake Michigan. The atmosphere was nothing like the suffocating halls of NovaTrust. This place pulsed with energy and fulminant ideas. I presented a topic I had been developing for months: human-centered security architecture. It wasn't a deeply technical talk, but rather a philosophical one about how technology only thrives when people are trusted and supported the right way. After my talk, several attendees came to speak with me, but one in particular caught my attention. A woman in her early 40s, small frame, sharp eyes. She introduced herself as Jenna Park, Chief Security Officer at Altaris, the fintech competitor Harper often described as unethical. Jenna spoke to me with genuine warmth. Your presentation was remarkable. I loved how you emphasized the human factor. Too many in this field forget that. I thanked her and we began to talk. At first, it was technical, firewall logic, and user behavior analytics, but soon the conversation turned more personal. Jenna told me about how Altaris operated, a place where engineers had a voice, where every member understood the architecture they worked with. I was quiet for a moment before I said, "Sounds like a dream." Jenna smiled softly. "Not a dream, just a different way of doing things. I believe when good people are heard, they never leave." We sat by the cafe window overlooking the lake. The Chicago afternoon sky was so impossibly blue it felt unreal. Jenna asked if I'd ever considered consulting for other companies, sharing what I'd learned about human-focused security models. I half joked, half confessed. I barely have time to breathe, let alone consult. "Then let me help you find time," Jenna said, calm but firm. Altaris is forming an independent advisory group. No contracts, no strings attached, just strategic consultation. You can join on weekends whenever it suits you. Everything is transparent. No access to live data or production systems. I just need your insight. I stayed silent. In my head, I heard Harper's voice. No one is irreplaceable. I thought of the $50 Starbucks card, the sleepless nights, the ignored reports. A part of me wanted to refuse out of fear, exhaustion, and self-preservation. But then Jenna added, "The pay, of course, isn't bad. Triple your current salary for a few hours a week. But more than the money, I think you need to feel your value being respected again." That sentence stopped me. How long had it been since anyone spoke to me about value? I had become a shadow running a system, not a person being listened to. I nodded, half in agreement, half as a challenge to myself. "All right, I'll do it. This weekend." From then on, I lived 2 parallel lives. By day, I was still NovaTrust's lead engineer, the one keeping the entire system afloat, solving endless requests no one else understood. On weekends, I either flew to Chicago or joined Jenna's team remotely, where every meeting felt open, intelligent, and respectful. The consulting work for Altaris was lighter than I expected. I only reviewed documentation, assessed infrastructure designs, and gave strategic recommendations, never touching live data. But what surprised me most was the feeling of being heard. When I spoke, people took notes. They asked questions. They debated. No one dismissed my input with budget constraints or next quarter priorities. After 8 weeks, I found myself smiling more, sleeping better. I could breathe without guilt. NovaTrust was still the same, rigid, noisy, draining, while Altaris felt like a window opening to a world where people and purpose weren't at war. One Thursday evening, as I drove home, my phone buzzed. A message from Jenna. "We're expanding the advisory group. The leadership team is very impressed with you. Whenever you're ready to move full-time, just say the word." I stared at the message, and Lucas's old line echoed in my mind. "No one is irreplaceable." I laughed softly. Maybe he was about to learn that for himself. The next day, I flew to Chicago to meet Jenna in person. We sat in her new office, glass walls overlooking the glowing highway. She placed a contract on the table. "I'm not here to pressure you, but if you want to change, this is your chance." I was about to respond when my phone rang. Harper's number. I looked at the screen, hesitated for a second, then silenced the call. I knew they never reached out for good reasons. A week later, I went to the Altaris building one evening to discuss project details. As I stepped out of the car, I didn't notice that a former NovaTrust employee was standing across the street watching me. The streetlight cast a soft glow over the Altaris logo behind me, just bright enough to imprint itself on a nearby security camera lens. I didn't know then that just a few days later, that single image would become Harper's weapon, the proof she would use to close the door I had only just begun to open. That morning, when I walked into the NovaTrust office, the air felt different. Eyes turned away, small conversations stopped as I passed. I could feel something was off, even though no one said a word. Lucas's assistant came to my desk, her face tense. "Harper wants to see you in the conference room on the 17th floor." I just nodded. That was the top floor of the building, where decisions were made, and where people were only summoned when something serious was about to happen. When the door closed behind me, Harper was standing by the window, arms crossed. Lucas sat across from her, silent, his face heavy with the effort of not meeting my eyes. On the table was a laptop already open, showing a familiar image. The photo of me walking into the Altaris building a few weeks earlier. "We need to talk," Harper began, her tone steady and cold. "You know this photo, don't you?" "I know," I said. "I went there to meet Jenna Park, their technical director. We discussed theoretical frameworks for security architecture. Nothing confidential, and I didn't touch any NovaTrust data." Harper gave a short, thin laugh, sharp as a blade. "I don't care what you touched or didn't touch. The problem is that you set foot inside a competitor's building. Do you realize that violates the company's security policy?" Lucas spoke up, his voice lined with false regret. "Mara, you should have told us first. Harper's right. This could be seen as a conflict of interest." I looked at him, then at Harper. I took a personal leave to attend a conference. I wasn't representing NovaTrust. Who I meet on my own time isn't covered in the contract. Harper cut me off, her tone turning sharper. "Your contract includes an absolute confidentiality clause. You are not allowed to contact or collaborate with any organization operating in the same field. And now you've been seen entering a competitor's building with your NovaTrust badge in your bag." I realized then this wasn't a misunderstanding. They had made their decision long before I walked in. Harper was just finishing the performance. "I've spoken with the legal department," she continued, "and we all agree you've breached the loyalty clause in your contract. Therefore, your termination takes effect immediately." Lucas opened a folder and pushed a sheet toward me. "Mara, please sign here. You'll receive 1 month of severance, provided you return all passwords and access credentials before leaving." I sat still for a few seconds. The silence was so complete I could hear the air conditioner humming overhead. I looked at the paper, then at the two of them, people I once thought of as colleagues, maybe even allies. "You know," Harper said, her voice quiet but cutting. "You're good at what you do, but you're too confident. No one here is irreplaceable." A strange calm settled over me. No anger, no fear, just a quiet emptiness in my chest. I picked up the pen, signed the paper, and set it down, meeting Harper's eyes. "You're right," I said softly. "I should focus on one position." Harper frowned slightly, not quite catching the meaning. Lucas looked up, uneasy. I stood, folded the paper, and slid it back toward them. "I'll hand over everything properly. All necessary files are stored in the system." That was only half true. Everything was recorded, but only I knew how the system truly worked. Harper signaled to the security guard outside the door. "You'll be escorted to your desk to collect your belongings. I hope you'll cooperate and not make this harder." "Don't worry," I said. "I have nothing to hide." The hallway was silent. As I passed, a few coworkers looked up, then quickly looked away. Some eyes held curiosity, others fear. One or two gave small nods, quiet gestures of respect, before turning back to their screens. I simply smiled in return. I packed quickly, a few personal files, my old coffee mug, and the small plant that sat by the window. 3 years of my life fit neatly into one box. As I walked past the reception desk, I unclipped my ID badge and set it down. The NovaTrust logo embossed on the plastic caught the light. Beneath it was the company slogan I once believed in: "People first." I let out a quiet laugh. Outside, the early spring breeze brushed against my face. My phone buzzed, a message from Jenna. "The full-time offer still stands. Triple your current salary. When would you like to start?" I looked up at the clear sky, the glass towers gleaming as if nothing had happened. I typed back, "I can start Monday." Before leaving, I turned for one last look at the building. For a moment, just a fleeting one, I saw Harper through the 17th floor window, standing tall, proud, convinced she had won. I whispered, just loud enough for myself to hear, "We'll see, Harper. We'll see who's truly irreplaceable." Then I turned and walked away. The wind caught my hair, carrying a lightness I hadn't felt in years. I didn't realize that when the doors of NovaTrust closed behind me, the countdown to their downfall had already begun. 3 days after I left NovaTrust, Austin eased into a new work week. The sky was gray and heavy, the air thick with the smell of coming rain. I had started my new job at Altaris, just as promised, an open, bright office where people actually listened to each other. But even as I tried to focus on my new project, I could sense that something outside was beginning to shift. That Monday morning, I received a message from an old friend who still worked at NovaTrust. "A small system glitch," she wrote. "A few dozen customer accounts can't log in. Everyone's panicking." I read the message and smiled. That small glitch was the very issue I had warned them about countless times, the periodic authentication script that required manual maintenance every week. Without me, no one knew how to handle that complex sequence. I had written the instructions once, but Harper dismissed them, saying the IT team could figure it out on their own. Later that afternoon, an email from Lucas appeared in my inbox. "You probably still remember the old authentication structure. The system's running slow. If you could share a few tips, I'd appreciate it." I read it, then deleted it. I was gone, and if they had ever wanted my advice, it was already written in those forgotten reports. On Tuesday morning, Jenna walked to my desk holding a cup of coffee. "Have you seen the news?" I shook my head. She set her tablet down in front of me. The headline took up half the financial page. NovaTrust systems hit by major outage. Thousands of customer accounts temporarily locked. I glanced over it without a word. Jenna studied my face, but I stayed calm. "Do you want to say anything?" she asked. "I already did," I replied. If a system can only stand when one person holds it up, it was flawed from the beginning. By afternoon, NovaTrust's internal network was nearly paralyzed. Backup servers had drifted out of sync, causing replication errors that spread through the system like falling dominoes. It all started with one small piece of code, the same one I used to fix manually each week. I once tried to train a new engineer to handle it, but he was let go the next week under a cost optimization policy. Tuesday passed in strange silence. I sat in Altaris's quiet office, staring at my screen, feeling the contrast so vividly it almost hurt. Here, meetings were calm and thoughtful. Over there, chaos was erupting. Near midnight, My phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen, but I knew exactly who it was. I let it ring, then silenced it. A message followed moments later. Mara, this is Harper. We need you back, just for a few hours. There's an issue with the authentication servers. No one understands the system like you do. I looked at the message for a long time. No one understands the system like you. I had said that sentence hundreds of times. I set the phone down, turned off the screen, and kept working. Wednesday morning arrived, wrapped in mist from the night's rain. Turned on the radio as I drove to work and heard the reporter's voice. Fintech company NovaTrust Systems is facing a major technical failure that has left millions of users unable to access their accounts. Company shares have dropped 15% this morning. When I reached Altaris, Jenna was already waiting. The news is everywhere, she said. Many of their clients are contacting us for backup options. I nodded without a word. That afternoon, another email from Lucas arrived. Longer this time, heavy with desperation. Mara, I'm sorry for everything. They were wrong to push you out. Please, just tell me how to fix this. Or at least tell me where to start. I'm begging you. I typed a single line in reply. I'm focusing on one position only. Then I hit send. That night, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Unknown numbers kept calling. Harper, Lucas, even the CEO whose voice I'd never once heard. I turned the phone off and left it in my drawer. At Altaris, our team was planning the expansion of a new security framework, one Jenna believed would soon become the industry standard. As night settled, I stayed alone in the office, staring out through the glass wall. The city lights shimmered across the river, and I knew the lights in the NovaTrust tower were burning too, but theirs burned with panic. I took a sip of coffee, opened my laptop, and read the latest update. NovaTrust confirms severe malfunction in transaction authentication. Users are temporarily unable to access accounts or transfer funds. Technical teams are working to resolve the issue. Below were angry comments from customers, investors, and analysts asking who was responsible. I didn't feel joy or revenge, just a quiet stillness, like watching something inevitable unfold. When I left the office, rain had started again, heavy drops striking the pavement. I opened my car door, sat down, and watched the water trail down the windshield. In the reflection, my face looked blurred and distant. I whispered to myself, to no one else. I warned them. 3 years ago, I told them this would happen. The dashboard clock read 11:48 at night. I started the engine, the sound steady and low. Across the city, inside NovaTrust's headquarters, lines of failed code kept running like a relentless storm. And I knew the collapse had only just begun, 3 days. That was the time I had told them. If I ever disappeared, within 3 days, the whole system would fall apart. And now the countdown had reached its final second. Thursday morning, I arrived at the Altaris office earlier than usual. The city hadn't fully woken up yet, tall buildings still wrapped in thin morning mist. The meeting room was quiet. The only sound was the steady rhythm of typing. Jenna was on the phone in the hallway, her voice low, fast, and tense. When she stepped inside, she set her phone on the table and said, "They just lost 40% of their stock value overnight. NovaTrust is in free fall." I wasn't surprised, but my heartbeat slowed for a moment. "What about the system?" I asked. "Almost paralyzed," Jenna replied. "Customers can't access data, transactions are frozen, and inside, they say the servers are conflicting with each other. Their tech team can't trace the source of the failure. Rumor is, Harper hasn't left the building in 2 nights." I nodded. "I told them before that if no one understands the system as a whole, one small misalignment will spread through the entire network. But they didn't believe me." Jenna sat down, her gaze lingering longer than usual. "And now they're paying for it. I'm guessing they'll reach out to you soon." She was right. Just a few hours later, while I was presenting a new project plan with the Altaris engineers, my phone began to vibrate nonstop. 7 missed calls from the same number, Lucas Reed. I stared at the screen quietly until it went dark. Then another call came through from an unfamiliar number. I recognized the voice as soon as I picked up. "Mara," Harper said, her tone hoarse, shaky, and urgent. Nothing like the cold composure she once had. "We need your help. The authentication system is completely down. The transaction process is locked. No one can reach the central server. You're the only one who knows how to restore it. I was silent for a few seconds. Then I asked softly, "Do you remember what I told you, Harper? That if I ever left in 3 days, everything would collapse?" Harper exhaled sharply. "Mara, I know we were wrong, but you don't understand. The company's on the brink of bankruptcy. Thousands of customers are affected. I'm begging you." "Now you understand the cost of ignoring warnings," I said evenly. "I never wanted this to happen, Harper, but this is the natural consequence of underestimating the people you depend on most." There was a pause on the other end. Then she spoke again, almost whispering, almost broken. "Name your price. I'll take it to the board. Just come back." I smiled slightly, though she couldn't see it. "It's not about money, it's about value." I paused for a moment, then ended the call. For the rest of the day, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Calls, texts, emails. By afternoon, a new message from Lucas appeared on the screen. "The CEO has fired Harper and Finn. The board wants to meet with you. They'll agree to any terms if you help restore the system." I stared at the message, not with satisfaction, but with a strange calm, like watching a building collapse, knowing you'd warned them it would. Jenna stepped into my office and set a folder on my desk. "They just sent an official request through us," she said. "The NovaTrust board reached out to Altaris asking to collaborate on system recovery. They want to rehire you as an independent consultant. I won't stop you if you want to take it, but it's your call." I opened the folder and skimmed the proposal. Hourly consulting rate? $50,000. Full operational authority. No limits on scope or duration. I closed my eyes for a moment. 3 years ago, they couldn't approve a budget to hire one additional engineer. Now they were willing to pay for every minute of my time like it was gold. I looked up and said slowly, "I'll do it. But they won't get me back the way I was. I'll guide them remotely, and they'll follow every condition I set." Jenna nodded. "I'm sure they'll agree. They don't have a choice." That afternoon, I called the new board representative directly, Terrence Walsh. His voice was firm but tight with worry. "Ms. Wesley, thank you for taking the call. The situation is worse than the media reports. All transactions have stopped. Major clients are pulling out, and investors are applying pressure. We need your help, and fast." "I have conditions," I said firmly. "First, I won't return to that building. All instructions will be remote. Second, I direct only. Your team will execute. Third, you'll sign a public statement admitting I warned you about this risk multiple times and was ignored it." He was silent for a few seconds, then said, "Agreed. Payment will be transferred as soon as you confirm the start." "Good," I said. "And one more thing. All engineers laid off in the past 3 years must receive compensation and positive reference letters. Otherwise, I stop immediately." Walsh answered quickly, "Done. I'll handle it." I ended the call and sat in silence for a while. This didn't feel like a victory. It felt like standing in front of a collapsing building, not because you pushed it, but because you knew it was already rotting inside. Jenna walked in, her voice steady. "You just did the right thing," she said. "Not because they deserve it, but because they needed to understand what happens when they refuse to listen." I nodded, exhaling softly. "It's not revenge, Jenna. It's a lesson." That night, I opened my laptop and began writing the recovery protocol for NovaTrust, the same steps I had once presented, once dismissed, once cut from the budget as unnecessary. Line by line, I guided them through repairs, synchronization, authentication rebuilds, and permission restructuring. Their engineers followed under pressure, sweat visible even through the video call. Harper was gone, but Lucas was there, pale and exhausted, his voice trembling. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "Don't thank me," I replied without looking up from the screen. "Thank whoever you listen to next time someone warns you." 4 hours later, the system began to stabilize. Servers responded. Transactions resumed. The error logs cleared one by one until the dashboard finally displayed the words, "System status stable." Across the screen, the team sighed in relief. I said only one final thing. "The system will run again, but don't think you're safe. What's truly broken isn't the code, it's how you treat people." I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and stepped out of the Altaris office. Outside, the Austin sky glowed amber with the last light of day. Sunlight brushed across the glass towers, still standing, still shining, but I knew there were fractures no one could see. Today, NovaTrust survived, but it will never be the same again. A week after that fateful consultation, everything seemed to calm down. The press reported that NovaTrust had successfully restored its system after a major technical failure, but anyone in the industry knew it was just a fresh coat of paint over a cracked wall. I didn't even finish reading the article, just caught my name mentioned in a small line at the bottom. Sources confirmed the company had rehired a former chief security engineer to assist with recovery. I stayed silent. I didn't want recognition for a fracture they created. But in the tech world, everyone already knew the truth. NovaTrust survived because of the person they once cast aside. At Altaris, my work gradually found its rhythm. Jenna kept her word and gave me full authority to build a new cybersecurity division. For the first time in years, I had a real team, 8 talented engineers, each with clear responsibilities, each respected, each heard. I no longer spend sleepless nights alone. I started teaching them what I had learned at NovaTrust, that true security doesn't come from firewalls or encryption, but from people. One afternoon, while I was guiding the team through a layered authentication design, my phone buzzed. It was Lucas. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Mara. His voice was hoarse, tired. I just wanted to say thank you. Without you, we would have lost everything. I didn't help you, I said calmly. I helped the employees who would have lost their jobs if the company fell. Don't get it wrong. I know, he murmured. Harper was fired. Finn, too. The CEO resigned. The board's restructuring everything. They realized you were right. I said nothing. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction, but all I felt was emptiness. I was too tired to find joy in someone else's downfall. Have you ever thought about coming back? He asked quietly. I already did, I said. Just not in the way you think. I hung up. Later that afternoon, Jenna entered the meeting room with a rare spark of excitement. The board just approved my proposal, she said. We're launching a corporate security consulting division, designing and rebuilding systems for other companies. And I want you to lead it. I looked at her, surprised. A whole division? Yes, Jenna smiled. You just proved to the entire industry that Altaris isn't the only one who needs you. What you did with NovaTrust is proof enough. Now dozens of companies are reaching out, afraid they might be the next victims of their own negligence. I stayed silent for a few seconds, then nodded. If I take it, I want this division to do more than fix technical issues. We'll teach them how to build sustainable work cultures, where engineers are respected and warnings aren't ignored. Jenna smiled knowingly. That's exactly why I chose you. We began mapping out the plan together. I spent the next few days outlining staffing structures, service frameworks, and risk assessment protocols. It felt strange. After so many years, I was finally building something, not to put out fires, but to prevent them. A week later, during a team meeting about the new consulting model, a news alert popped up on the conference room screen. Jenna frowned and turned up the volume. NovaTrust Systems faces a regulatory investigation following multiple customer complaints about temporary data loss. The company confirmed it is cooperating fully with authorities. The room fell quiet. A young engineer asked, Do you think they'll make it? I looked at the screen where the NovaTrust logo spun beneath the red headline. Maybe, I said, but they'll have to start over, from trust, from listening, and from learning the value of the people they once dismissed. That afternoon, an email arrived from an unfamiliar address. Just one line. They're blaming you. They're saying you intentionally left bugs in the system before you left. I sat still for a moment, then forwarded the message to Jenna. She read it, her brow tightening slightly. I figured they'd try that. When people are desperate, they'll grab anyone they can to blame. I'm not afraid, I said. I have records of every procedure, every warning, every report I sent over those 3 years. I don't need to defend myself. The truth can do that on its own. Jenna nodded. Good, but don't let them drag you back. You have bigger work ahead than revisiting the past. That night, I left the office late. As city lights reflected off my windshield, I realized there was no bitterness left in me. NovaTrust could say whatever they wanted. it wouldn't change the truth that they had dug their own grave. Before shutting down my computer, I opened one last email, the thank you letter from the NovaTrust board after the consultation. I reread the final line. We look forward to the opportunity of working with you again in the future. I deleted it without a moment's hesitation. My future wasn't there anymore, and maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something far greater, a quiet revolution in the very world that once tried to bury me. 3 months after NovaTrust collapsed and tried to rise again, my corporate security consulting division at Alteris officially launched. We called it Aurora Division, Dawn, a name that meant a new beginning. The first few weeks were busier than I expected. The story of NovaTrust's failure hadn't faded yet, and dozens of companies came to us with the same question whispered in fear. Could we be the next NovaTrust? Jenna gave me full control. I hired 12 engineers and 3 strategic consultants. It was a diverse group, people who'd been undervalued, overlooked, or burned out in big corporations. I saw in their eyes a mix of caution and hunger. They didn't want to relive what they'd escaped, and I promised them they wouldn't. At Aurora's first meeting, I told them, we don't just fix systems. We change how companies think about the people within them. Technology doesn't betray anyone. It's arrogance and indifference that bring everything down. The room fell silent, then heads nodded one by one. They understood. We worked like we were racing against time. Each project had its own story: a regional bank that had been quietly breached for months, an insurance firm storing client data improperly, a startup obsessed with growth that had ignored basic security practices. I traveled everywhere: New York, Seattle, Denver, consulting, rebuilding infrastructure, and most importantly, teaching companies to listen to their own engineers. With every project completed, I could feel the shift. Some clients called back just to say one sentence: we've started listening to our tech team. To me, that was the real success. One morning, as I reviewed Aurora's first financial report, Jenna knocked on my door. There's something you should see, she said, setting down the national financial newspaper. The headline stretched across the front page: NovaTrust replaces entire leadership team. The former security engineer, once fired, credited with saving the company. Below it was a photo of me speaking at a recent cybersecurity conference. I stared at it for a long moment. Beneath the article was a quote from Terrence Walsh, the new board chairman. We were wrong not to listen. She didn't just save our system, she forced us to change how we see human value. I folded the paper. Jenna asked, do you feel vindicated? I smiled and shook my head. No, just at peace. At least they learned something. That afternoon, an email came from Terrence himself. We've implemented the full organizational model you proposed. The new security unit is performing well, and we'd like to invite you to speak at the annual industry summit about that framework. I read it several times. 3 years ago, Harper had banned me from speaking at a small conference, claiming the company had no budget for extracurricular activities. Now the same organization was asking me to speak as a symbol of reform. Life had a way of turning full circle. I accepted. The morning of the conference, I stood backstage, watching the hall glow with light. Hundreds of attendees, technical directors, experts, investors. In the front row sat Jenna, the Aurora team, and to my surprise, Lucas. He looked different, thinner. His once proud eyes now carried the quiet weight of someone who had watched an empire break apart. When the host announced my name, the room erupted in applause. I walked out calmly, without haste, without pride. I looked around and began with a simple line. 3 years ago, I stood where many of you stand now, a tired engineer, warning of collapse, unheard. And then the collapse came. But I learned something. Failure isn't an ending. It's a chance to rebuild, properly this time. The room went silent. I spoke about Aurora's philosophy, about building human-centered systems, about NovaTrust's costly lesson. No judgment, no bitterness, just truth. When I finished, the entire hall rose to its feet. I saw Lucas bow his head, then smile faintly. In that moment, I knew everything had truly come full circle. After the conference, I stepped into the sunlit hallway. Jenna walked beside me, grinning. You know, Aurora just got named Altaris's fastest growing division this year. I turned to her. We're just getting started. That night, I returned to my apartment, opened the window, and looked out over the glowing city. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number, though I recognized it instantly. Harper. I just wanted to say, you were right, and I was wrong. I'm trying to start over somewhere new. Thank you for not destroying us when you could have. I read the message and set the phone down. No need to reply. Some apologies don't need confirmation. The act of saying them is hard enough. I gazed out the window. The city lights merged with the faint glow of the moon. Everything was so still I could hear my own heartbeat. No anger, no bitterness, just peace. I knew my journey wasn't over, but for the first time I could see the path ahead clearly, not to seek revenge, but to lead. NovaTrust was the past, Aurora was the future, and this time I was the one writing the rules of the game. 6 months after the conference, Aurora had grown so fast that I barely noticed I was living in a new chapter of my life. From a team of 8, we had become a division of more than 40 specialists, the fastest growing unit in Altaris history. Companies from the Fortune 500 kept coming to us, not just for technical consulting, but to learn about the human first organizational model Jenna and I had built. One September morning, I received an email from Global Tech Review. They wanted an exclusive interview titled The Woman Who Made the Tech Industry Listen. I wasn't used to that kind of attention, but Jenna said it was a chance to share Aurora's philosophy. Not a personal success story, but a cultural shift. I agreed. The interview took place at Altaris headquarters. The reporter asked how it felt knowing NovaTrust, the company that once fired me, was now rebuilding itself on the same principles I'd proposed years ago. I smiled and answered gently, I don't see it in terms of winning or losing. They learned what they needed to learn, and so did I. Sometimes you have to be pushed out of what feels safest to see where you truly belong. The article was published the next day and spread quickly. Alongside the praise came skepticism. She was just lucky. NovaTrust collapsed on its own. She just got lucky with the timing. Some even accused me of leaving intentional bugs in the system to create my comeback. I didn't respond. I'd lived too long with misunderstanding to be shaken by it. Jenna was right. The higher you rise, the easier it is for others to doubt what they can't comprehend. One afternoon, while reviewing blueprints for a new project, my assistant said someone was waiting in the lobby. When I stepped out, Lucas stood there in an old suit, looking uneasy. You were looking for me? I asked, voice steady. Yes, he nodded. I didn't mean to intrude, but I thought you should know. I just left NovaTrust. They're still trying to fix things, but some damage runs too deep to repair. I studied him for a moment before saying, You can still start over. The point is to know what not to repeat. He gave a tired smile. You were always right. I wish I'd realized sooner. He hesitated, then added, Harper's working at a smaller firm now, in a technical advisory group. She says she'll never run things the old way again. I nodded, feeling something loosen quietly inside me. Maybe everything has its price. When Lucas left, I returned to my office. Jenna was standing by the window, the sunset glowing against the glass. He came to apologize? She asked, still watching the skyline. I don't think it was an apology, I said. More like closure. That night, I drove home late. Austin shimmered under city lights. At a red light, I glanced toward the old NovaTrust Tower, still standing, still lit, but stripped of its arrogance. I realized I felt nothing. No anger, no regret, not even pity, just distance. The next morning, Jenna called me into her office and laid a proposal on the desk, excitement bright in her voice. We're opening Aurora's European branch. The board wants you to lead the international training program. They want your model expanded. I paused for a moment. From a fired engineer to leading an international initiative, I smiled softly. Life really knows how to tell a story. Jenna laughed. You earned it. And the best part, you didn't have to destroy anyone to get here. I nodded. In that moment, I finally understood what I'd been chasing all along. It was never revenge. It wasn't about proving who was right. It was about proving that another way could exist, one where competence and trust mattered more than power. A month later, I stood on stage at the Global Tech Summit in Berlin. In front of me were hundreds of faces representing the world's biggest corporations. I told my story, not as an act of defiance, but as a reminder. Never underestimate the value of the person quietly keeping your system alive. Because when they leave, you may lose more than data. You may lose the soul of your company. When the applause filled the room, I looked out at the crowd. In the front row, Jenna smiled. Beside her were the young faces of Aurora, the new generation of engineers, strong and aware of their worth. That evening, back at my hotel, I opened my laptop to finish a report. In my inbox was a short email from Terrence Walsh. We've completed the training program you recommended. NovaTrust is slowly regaining trust. Thank you for forcing us to become a better company. I read it and smiled. There's no greater victory than seeing the people who once doubted you change just to survive. But that victory only matters when you didn't have to step on anyone to earn it. I closed the laptop and stepped onto the balcony. Berlin at night shimmered with light. I looked up at the sky and thought about the path that led me here. From a lonely engineer in a small, dim office to someone the tech world now listened to. A cold breeze brushed my face. I closed my eyes and heard the words I'd spoken 3 years ago to Harper, the day she fired me. I should focus on one position. Now I understand. That position wasn't within any company. It was within myself. It was value, strength, belief, the part of me no one could ever fire. I opened my eyes and smiled. One chapter had closed. Another had begun. And this time, I knew for certain I no longer worked for them. They were the ones working for me. I rested my hands on the balcony rail, watching the city stretch below, lights glowing like circuits in a living system. Each light was a person, a story. And somewhere out there, someone was standing at the same crossroads I once faced, underestimated, dismissed, yet quietly holding on to their worth. Maybe we've all been Mara at some point, the person forced to leave just to find themselves again. What matters isn't how we fall, but how we rise and how we make the world look back. Which moment in this story resonated most with you? Was it when I was fired, when NovaTrust fell, or when I chose forgiveness over revenge? Tell me your thoughts. I read every comment. And if you believe that justice doesn't always need weapons or vows, just the quiet success of someone once overlooked, subscribe and turn on notifications. Thank you for listening. The story may have ended, but the journey to reclaim your worth never does.